Okay, so we are going to continue with our Serve Safe class, and there's a couple things that I didn't mention in the first video that I want to make sure that I do say this on this video. At any point in time, it might be good to pause the video, that way you can look at the materials and read through them as you're going along with this. So there'll be a couple slides that are important to pause, and I'll probably mention it during those slides that you do that. Okay, so let's continue on. Chapter 1, we are talking about foodborne illnesses, and there is a high-risk population that you typically at a restaurant or at a hospital or any type of food service industry that you're going to always be aware of when you're serving these people. So when you're serving the elderly, when you're serving children or preschool age children, pediatrics, and when you're serving people with a compromising immune system. So, okay, let's continue with keeping food safe. So, remember we talked about the 5 things where there are 5 risk factors and there's 5 ways to fix them. Here is that slide again. And this is how do you fix them. So, you can read through that, but it's going to be the same thing. You know, control your time and temperature. Don't cross-contaminate. Make sure everybody practices good hygiene. Always buy from a reputable supplier. And clean and sanitize. When you train staff, there's going to be policies and procedures at every restaurant, at every hospital, at every nursing home. Every kitchen is going to have their policies and procedures. So of course you want to make sure that you have your training procedures intact, and that you are documenting and always supervising the training that needs to be done. So regarding food agencies, government agencies that make sure our food is safe, there's going to be 5 of them. And I'm going to show you this slide, and I think it's important for you to be able to read this, because you need to pause this and you need to be able to know, okay, what the agencies do. I'm trying to see if I can make this a little bit bigger so you could read it. See if we can get that. So bear with me for a second. I'm going to try to make this bigger. Let's try this. No, it's too big. Okay. Alright, so you'll want to pause this. You'll read through this. So you'll read about FDA, you'll read about the USDA, the CDC. Remember the USDA, you are going to see that stamp on meat. So and you see that at the grocery all the time. You buy your meat and you see the stamp there. So that will tell you, what. So if you can just remember the USDA does meat, poultry, and eggs, you'll be in good hands. Alright, so pause it, read through this slide. Let's go back to our slideshow. Alright, we are ready for chapter 2. So we're going to discuss the types of contamination that occur for foodborne illness. Remember we talked about them being biological, chemical, and physical? Okay, so contaminants are found everywhere. You're going to find them on animals, you're going to find them in the air, you're going to find them in water, you're going to find them in dirt. Contaminants can happen because people either do it by accident or they do it deliberately. They can contaminate the food. People can contaminate food anytime. They cough on the food, they sneeze on the food, they touch the food with dirty hands. We've talked about that. Alright, so let's look at biological contaminants. Let's actually go back to the slide. Okay, so I told you biological contaminants in the first video that they are something that you cannot see with the naked eye. So you typically want to see a biological contaminant under the microscope because they're so small. You think that you're eating food and you think that it's safe, but really in reality it's not, because it has a harmful microorganism. And remember, there's also something called toxins, poison. So anytime someone has consumed poison, for the most part, the person didn't realize they were consuming poison. Otherwise, they wouldn't have eaten it. So that's another biological contaminant. I didn't mention it earlier, but that's one to be aware of. We talked about the 4 types of pathogens. So you're either going to be a bacteria, you're going to be a virus, you're going to be a parasite, or you're going to be a fungi. When people get a biological contamination, so for example, someone gets E. coli, what are the symptoms that that person's going to have when they have E. coli? It can be diarrhea, vomiting, fever, nausea, abdominal cramps, jaundice. Jaundice doesn't occur in all illnesses actually, but just be aware that it does occur in certain biological contaminations, and so when you get a foodborne illness, that could be a possibility, and I'll talk about which ones give you jaundice. So when someone gets sick with a biological contaminant, it can be something that can happen like immediately, or it can be something that can take up to 6 weeks before it shows up. So be aware of that, because sometimes you think, oh, you get sick and you think that it's something that you ate the day before. It can actually be something that you ate 3 weeks ago. It doesn't necessarily mean it's something that you ate the day before. We talked about bacteria before, and you find it everywhere. Bacteria love something called fat tom, and we will go over fat tom. You cannot see, smell, or taste it, so that's where you think you're eating something safe, but you're not. And how do you prevent it? Well, you make sure you cook food to the right time, and you make sure you cook food and keep it at the right temperature. Alright, so let's talk about how bacteria grows. And I told you that we're going to go over fat tom, and here you're going to see it. So the acronym fat tom is for food, acidity, temperature, time, oxygen, and moisture. So be aware of these. Just know what they mean. So, of course, bacteria. Bacteria love food. Well, they need to grow in food. So, in order for them to survive, they'll grow like on your chicken, or they'll grow on your beef, or they'll grow on your rice. And so, be aware of that. Acidity. Bacteria grow best in food that contains little or no acid. So here you see acidic, neutral, and alkaline. And you'll see that you have this red zone. As you continue to move up the scale, bacteria will start to grow. The lower you get in the scale, it's death. Bacteria cannot live like in an acidic environment. Okay, so temperature is important, and here we're going to talk about a temperature danger zone. You do need to know this. So whenever you see temperature danger zone, you need to know what that is. So bacteria grow rapidly between 41 degrees and 135 degrees Fahrenheit. Memorize that. Write that down right now. You need to know it. 41 to 135. It's not going to change. Bacteria growth is limited when food is held above or below temperature's danger zone. So for example, what it's saying there, it's saying, okay, I keep my refrigerator at 38 degrees. Well, you're going to most likely be okay, because the temperature danger zone is 41 degrees, so 38 is good. Or let's say you're keeping food on a warmer above 135 degrees. Well, that's okay also, because the danger zone is below that 135. So in between those two temperatures, that's when you have to be careful. Alright, so let's talk about time. Bacteria need time to grow. The more time bacteria spend in the danger zone, the greater chance they have to grow to unsafe levels. I'm pretty sure everybody has had this in a science class, even like at like a 7th grade level. They'll talk about how bacteria grow, and 2 bacteria become 4 bacteria. Those 4 bacteria double and they become 8. Those 8 double and they become 16. And so forth. And before you know it, bacteria can continue to double, and you can be in the millions of bacteria, like have millions and millions of bacteria within hours. So being very careful with keeping food at the right temperature is so important. Oxygen. So bacteria need oxygen to grow. They so for example, if you took out all the oxygen, that's why you'll see like food that's like completely like they take out the oxygen so that there is no oxygen so that it doesn't spoil. And I know you've seen that, and for some reason I can't think of the word right now, but don't expose bacteria to oxygen. Just be aware of that. Moisture. This slide is just telling you that, you know, they like moisture, so of course if something is moist, they're going to grow faster. So being aware of it, just know that the scale ranges from 0 to 1. I don't really know if you're going to see a lot of this, but just be aware that bacteria likes moisture. The more moisture you have, so the more chance you are going to have that the bacteria grows. Okay, so what can you do? How can you control fat tone? Well, you can cook food to the right temperature, and you can keep the time correctly, whether you're cooking the food for however long of time, or whether you're just keeping it warm, or how long you're going to keep it out of the fridge. So being aware of your time is important. Limit the time that it's in the temperature danger zone. Okay, so the next few slides are super important. You need to be aware of the 3 types of bacteria, and there's going to be 2 viruses that we're going to go over. The FDA says that the FDA has identified 3 types of bacteria that cause severe illness and are highly contagious. So on here you see Salmonella typhi. There's actually 2 Salmonellas. So just being aware that bacteria, Salmonella, can cause severe illness. Something called Shigella. And then the bottom one is enterohemorrhagic and Shiga toxin producing Escherichia coli. Well, you're like, what? Probably, you know, after reading that, that is actually E. coli. And we've heard about it on the news. It's something that is familiar. So just remember that number 3 there is E. coli. Okay, so these slides are super important. You need to pause the video in between each of these slides. You need to read all this information, because it's going to tell you, first it's going to give you the name of the bacteria. So, and then it's going to tell you how people get that bacteria. So the source. It's going to tell you, the slide is going to go over the food linked with the bacteria and how to prevent getting this bacteria. So every single one of these slides, you need to pause it, you need to read it, if you need to write it down, because you need to be able to know this stuff. So like, for example, I'll give you an example on this slide. When you think of Salmonella, you typically think of chicken, right? Like, that's how it's commonly known. But you probably don't think of your, like, beverages. You don't think of, like, when you walk up to a restaurant and you're going to get your fountain drink, that has a chance for you to get Salmonella typhi. People just don't think that, but it does. So just being aware of what food is linked with the bacteria. Here is the slide for Shigella. Again, like I said in the previous slide, you want to learn all this. You want to read it, take notes. Here is the slide for E. coli. Again, how people get it, what food is linked with it, and how to prevent it. Okay, so viruses. So being aware that viruses are different than bacteria. A virus is something that you cannot cook it out. So you know how I was saying earlier with bacteria, make sure you cook it to the right temperature. Well, that doesn't apply to a virus. And that doesn't mean that you don't have to make sure that you cook the chicken to the right temperature. You do. You have to cook it to the 165 degrees. But just being aware that you're not going to kill a virus if a virus is on there. So I would read this slide also. Actually, all the slides on chapter 2, you want to make sure that if you need it, pause it for a minute, read the slide. Make sure that you have an understanding of it. So here you'll see that you cannot destroy viruses with temperature. And I'm going to stop here because the video is actually going to close off. And I will continue with the next slide is which two viruses are the viruses that are known.